just a few things I'd like to set this up. Public institution, but private characteristics. And you've listened to some of Bob's story. What were some of the strategic and tactical things that you employed in the course of the year? What issues involved the Board of Trustees and the legislature, and how did that mix and your faculty as more roles and responses were called for from the senior team? How did you manage the media? You have certain requirements to be out there as a public institution. He's dying to say something. And then financial sustainability. You know, how are you going to move forward? So I'll open it up for your response.
UVM is a very strange place, as I'm sure you know. We have a public mission and a public character. We follow GASB accounting rules and so on, but we're not a state agency. None of us work for the state. The state doesn't own our land and buildings, and the state gives us very little. 7% of our operating budget this year and virtually no capital funds. I was just saying to my fellow panelists before we began, we get on average $1.6 million a year in state capital funds, so it's hardly an exaggeration to say it takes us 100 years to what UConn is getting in a single year under UConn 2000, or has been until recently. We issue our own bonds, and oddly, you know, there are a lot of ironies for us in this current year and the last 18 months, really. I'd agree with Bob. In fact, in April of '08, I put out an essay to the campus in which I focused on leveraging the urgencies of the rising economic and demographic storm, declining numbers of high school graduates, not only in Vermont, but throughout most of our catchment area down into Northern Virginia, along with the rising signs of economic crisis in the spring of '08, and made the case that for the campus, we really needed to focus on continuing to build academic distinction that would keep us viable in an increasingly competitive higher ed marketplace. We thought things were going to get really rough with smaller numbers of students and tremendous financial pressures on the institutions and on students and families. But the mantra was academic quality and distinction that we needed to build. So that went out in April of '08, and I thought I was sounding the alarm. I had no idea how bad things were going to get. We had more noise on the campus than, really a lot of noise. Demonstrations, students carrying coffins that symbolized the death of education at UVM, pretty steady rumors that the faculty would mount a no confidence vote in me, which they never did, so much as make the motion, but still, you paid attention. And headlines constantly in the newspaper. We ended up laying off 16 people, 8 of them in 2 varsity sports, one of which is the national pastime. That was very, very painful, and still makes a lot of waves in Vermont. The first irony I'd focus on is the disproportion of the noise on campus to the high quality of the outcomes for the institution. We went into this new academic year on July 1, '09 with an average 4% increase in the budgets of our colleges and schools. In fact, the range was 2.4% to 12%. Our faculty had 5% raises. Our lower paid staff had 2% raises. We froze people at $75K and above. And I guess I agree with Bob Brown that you can never communicate enough. But I think, one of the public aspects of UVM is we're subject to open meetings and public records laws. It makes things very, very difficult. There are very few exceptions for an executive session of the board. And if I send an email to the board, or even to the chairman of the board, it's discoverable as a public document. So this is a right. This is a tough environment to operate in, and the fact that I sent out a communication to the campus. It was actually a 7 or 8 page essay in April of '08. Throughout the financial crisis beginning in September, when our working capital, including virtually all the tuition we'd collected in August, was frozen in the Common Fund, I was communicating virtually monthly to the campus and sometimes more often. And I sometimes think that we may have communicated too much, although I can't figure out how we could have done it differently given our circumstances. The anxiety and fear had already so colored the disposition of many members of the campus community that it was still hard to deal with. So the communication issue, I think, is a tricky one, and I agree that you can never communicate enough, but I wish I had figured out really convincing ways to say to people more clearly. For example, in December, we've been asked to do some scenario planning. No one knows what will happen with the legislative session. No one knows what will happen with the new administration in Washington. You need to treat this all as extremely provisional. But, you know, in a way, I guess we felt we had to plan for worst case scenarios, and we'd actually been asked to plan for them. So I think that's a tough thing. One lesson learned, although I'm not sure how well I'll be able to apply this in the next time we're running down frighteningly frothy rapids, is a lot of this is about emotion, right, in the community. A lot of it's about fear. It's not about laying out an analytic solution. You have to be focused on that analytic solution, and it damn well better work. But as a leader, you really need to lay hands on this trembling beast and somehow calm it. And that's tough when people are afraid not only for their jobs, but for the very character and quality of an institution to which they have deep commitments. So I think simply recognizing that a lot of it's about feeling is very important. The third is I convened a lot of ad hoc advisory groups in the course of the year, and I think it was a good thing. I convened in October an ad hoc strategic budget advisors group, faculty, staff, students, administrators. I had another ad hoc group on academic quality assurance after we cut $11 million from the budget in the spring. While, as you heard, we up-budgeted the colleges and schools. We up-budgeted financial aid by 19% for undergraduates from 52 to 62 million. We increased the budget for library acquisitions to stay ahead of the serial. So we really cut in non-academic areas, quote-unquote non-academic areas, and focused on the academic core, on supporting what went on in the classrooms and the research enterprise. So that's, you know, we put the money where it needed to go. But these ad hoc groups, I think, you know, in retrospect, they did a good job. I am determined to try to rely much more going forward on the regular agencies of shared governance, faculty, senate committees, staff council, student government, and not to rely on the ad hoc groups, because I think ultimately they may weaken those agencies of shared governance that are really important to building long-term academic quality.
An old saying, I don't remember who said it, comes to mind, that you can't reason somebody out of something they've never been reasoned into, and how a lot of this, echoing what Dan said, relates very much to emotion. It relates to affect. In many cases, it's irrational. What we've seen going on in this crazy national health care debate, I hope nobody here today is going to jump up and accuse any of us of lying during this. But it's entirely irrational. It has little to do with reason. And therefore, leadership that goes beyond the analytical, that also deals with the issues of comfort and trust, is going to be especially effective, and I've certainly noted that in my travels and my interactions with presidents like the folks we have here today.